I do want to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I figure if I'm going to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh!, you are the guy to talk to about it. But there are a bunch of things I would also like to talk about beyond that. But also because you've been, I mean, obviously, I assume, into Yu-Gi-Oh! For quite a while. When did you start getting into that?
Strangely, I am not actually a long-time Yu-Gi-Oh fan compared to a lot of people. I think I got on board
Oh, really?
a lot later than most people did, because I, at least around my age, I started watching it right around when the show was finishing its initial broadcast run. I started watching it, I want to say, the final season was airing, but the stuff that was airing in England was the stuff that was like halfway through, like it was season 3. It was the stuff where they're in the virtual world, and the Battle City had to be put on hold so that they could get through the whole filler arc with Kaiba's imaginary dead brother. It was a strange place to jump in, but it was almost perfect in a way, because I was being introduced to Kaiba more than the other characters, and I hate to say it, but Kaiba has a little bit more depth than, say, like Tristan or Joey or maybe even Yugi, and so it was a very strange, fascinating way to be introduced to the show, because I'd always written it off as just a marketing gimmick about these card games, like, let's sell these cards to kids, but this was like a story about a guy who, like, was found out that his brother had, like, his stepbrother had died and was inside this artificial intelligence that was trying to retake his life. And it's like, wait, hold on. When does Pokemon happen? I don't. Yeah. It was a very strange. I didn't know what to expect. I mean, I thought that I knew what to expect, and I ended up getting a very different show. It was much more focused on characters and on story than I'd anticipated. But it was around, I want to say, it must have been around 2004, 2005 when I started watching it, which, like I said, I think is pretty late compared to a lot of the old school fans. But I fell in love with it relatively quickly, just because, and when I say fell in love with, I want to make it clear that I realize Yu-Gi-Oh! Isn't perfect. I realize Yu-Gi-Oh! Has a lot of flaws. It's pretty bloody cheesy, but like I love it for all of that. And I noticed how cheesy it was, and I don't know. I was just on board with the ridiculous premise and the silly, like, overdramatic monologues that everybody made, and I hadn't really been on board with a show in a long time. Like, there's very few shows where I'm like totally on board and I'm passionate and I'm obsessed with them, but Yu-Gi-Oh! Was one of the few exceptions where I was like, I gotta absorb as much information and as much media about this as possible, and that was pretty much a constant thing for, I want to say, at least 4 or 5 years.
So before that, you had not seen anything before that Noah arc? Or had you seen, like, glimpses or what?
The most I'd seen was I went to watch the Silent Hill movie with my friend up in Glasgow, and when we came out of it, we saw the Yu-Gi-Oh! Movie poster, because I guess that came out, at least in England, around a similar time. And I thought, this looks like the dumbest thing anyone's ever made. This looks like everything people make fun of anime for, like with the ridiculous hair and the I mean, it's very...
Oh, his beautiful hair.
Yeah. It's a very jarring visual style for Yu-Gi-Oh! As well. I didn't really know what to make of the visual style, because it's so angular and very striking. And it's just not it's not the same as, like, a lot, because I used to watch a lot like Miyazaki and stuff back in the day, and it's a very different look, and it didn't seem very appealing to me just from looking at that poster. So I wrote the whole thing off just from seeing that. I was like, I had no concept of it. I just thought it was like a marketing gimmick, like Beyblade or something, to get people to buy the merchandise, buy the toys. But I was wrong ultimately. I having gone back and read the manga and watched the show in full, I can honestly say that I think they were trying to tell an actual story, and that part of the reason I ended up making the Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged series that some of your listeners may be familiar with was I was trying to sort of come at it from the angle that, oh, people think this show's ridiculous, but there's actually a bit of heart and a bit of character going on, and I want to sort of focus on the characters a bit more and show people that this show, there's a little bit more going on than might meet the eye.
Right. Yeah, I remember I jumped in, I think, in the middle of the Pegasus arc, and I remember as a kid, back when Yu-Gi-Oh was first coming out, they sent out these like promotional cards in the mail, and so everyone was like I knew was like, what the fuck is this? Like it was very like it looked like dark Pokemon basically because it had Yu-Gi and it had like all this shit on it. And so that was kind of like my first taste. I didn't really get in the beginning, so I kind of had to just figure out context, what was going on. Like, okay, his grandpa's fucked, and something's going on. I forget exactly when I jumped in. It was, I think, around the time, because a lot of that early stuff with Weevil and stuff, like I didn't catch that the first time. So I think it was like around the time when Bakura had like joined up with them.
Okay.
And so, yeah. And beyond that point, I think I stopped watching in the middle of the, what was it? What's after Battle City? The Dragons, Waking the Dragons or something like that?
Yeah.
There's like a filler arc,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, I fell off there, but I loved Battle City, especially because I got really into the card game. And that's when, the show actually started following the rules instead of doing whatever the fuck they wanted.
Yeah.
Which was like, oh my god, like, what was it? Like, Yugi would just make up shit like, oh yes, my card does this, and it makes your cards do this. Like a field spell would do some ridiculous shit from what I remember. I don't remember the Pegasus.
Yeah, the field spells would affect which monsters could hurt which monsters. Like an air monster could hurt a land monster, but a land monster couldn't hurt an air monster necessarily. It was very strange. It was, I mean, I understood what they were going for, and in a way it's kind of cool because it adds a new layer of strategy to the game, but it also breaks the whole thing. It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, well, I think also at that point, when was the card game actually made? Like, was that made during the Pegasus manga arc or afterwards? Because I know, actually, I've only read the manga, like the original, which I want to talk about with you because I know you like that stuff. And then I've only read a little bit of the Duel Monsters stuff, but does the manga follow all? Like, I have not read actually any of the Battle City manga. Does it follow just the game rules completely?
Yeah. By that point, they definitely started actually implementing the rules. There are like slight differences between the anime and the manga. The way the story's treated, it's negligible. It's a pretty accurate telling in the anime. I'm pretty sure the card game must have started happening right around the time I don't know if it happened around the time the manga got to Battle City, but it must have definitely been a thing by the time season 1 of the show came out in America, in the West, because they were probably trying to tie it into that. I don't have the exact dates, but reading the manga, it's definitely really interesting seeing how the gaming aspect of it becomes slowly more focused around this very specific card game, this trading card game, because like originally it's just Yu-Gi-Oh! King of Games. He plays all these different games with people, and the game sort of reflects on the problem that he's dealing with and the characters that he's facing. So for it to... I understand people's complaints about it suddenly just all being about the card game, but at the same time, I think at some point you would have run out of games. He would have been dusting off his old Jenga game or something.
Yeah. Did Takahashi design the game himself, or did Konami help him? Do you know?
I don't know that, unfortunately. I'd be guessing.
It's a really well-designed game, actually, because I've been playing it for, I mean, not like the physical card game, but I've played like Nightmare Troubadour on like the DS, and now I'm, Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links is all I do basically whenever I have free time.
I'm exactly the same way. Nightmare Troubadour was like my introduction to how to actually play the game, because like I hadn't had a handheld console until the original DS. I'd never actually thought to buy one, and my parents had never... Like, consoles in general weren't really a big part of my household for a long time. So the DS was like breaking into new territory, and I was big into Yu-Gi-Oh! At the time, so I was like, oh, I've got to grab this game. And all those translation errors aside, I thought it was a pretty great representation of the show and the game itself, and it made me understand the game, which is something the show struggled to do at times.
Yeah, I was lucky enough where I had friends who... I had a friend who played the game, and he basically taught me how to play, and then that helped me appreciate the show, because I can't imagine watching that show not knowing at all how that game is played. Like, it's like they're talking a different language.
Yeah, I've tried
And then I
watching
remember.
Yu-Gi-Oh. I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead. No, I think there's a slight little lag because it's Skype. So don't worry. If I interrupt you or if you interrupt me, don't worry about it.
Sure.
And
I noticed
sorry
that
if
too.
I
Yeah.
interrupt you on accident.
Oh, no worries. Me too.
What were you gonna say?
Oh, I've watched Yu-Gi-Oh with people who have never tried watching the show, never seen the show, never been like fans of the card game or anything like that, and they've been bored to tears just by the fact that something will happen for 5 minutes and then the next 20 minutes is just people yelling card game rules at each other, and they don't know how to handle it because it's literally static for a long time, and it's just there's not many other shows like it except shows like that.
Yeah. It's kind of amazing how well that show did, considering, because like I've watched a little bit. I watched a little bit of what, like, Duel Masters, which was garbage, and I watched like, actually I haven't. No, I've seen like clips of like Beyblade, and that stuff is so like extremely focused on, or how I feel at least, on just the product. Whereas Yu-Gi-Oh, it's almost like like watching a Shakespearean play being performed, because first of all the dub actors are just so theatrical and the stakes are always so high. And that was actually a huge part of it for me as a kid, was like, fucking Merrick's gonna wreck their shit, Shadow Realm or whatever. It's the stakes are. It's amazing how much, and I attribute that to. I think Takahashi is a very not the best, but I think a good storyteller, and in at least in terms of like building up stakes and feeling for the characters and things like that, which is surprising because it's a card game show or manga.
Definitely. That's definitely why I went in with very, very low expectations. And like you say, it's not like it's the best storytelling ever, but it's remarkably good, like for the context.
Yeah.
I fell in love with the Yugi. I fell in love with Kaiba. I fell in love with a lot of these characters just from what was happening to them. And the card game stuff I wasn't nearly as on board with, but I was willing to stick it out through that stuff to see what would happen with them and how their world would change as a result. Because I've always said, the thing that I want out of a story is just a beginning, middle, and an end. And Yu-Gi-Oh seems to have that. And a lot of people sell it short, but I think honestly there's a great story in there if you're willing to look for it.
I should. Well, no, if I actually should, but I have the urge to go back and like watch. I never watched the final arc, and I feel like I should just do that. I think I missed out on the movie too. I was gonna watch the movie that just came out, but I was very busy. So I'll have to like get that on like DVD or like watch on DVD or something if they put it on Netflix. Because from what you were saying, from what a lot of people were saying, that movie was pretty good from what I hear.
It was very good. Like, as a Yu-Gi-Oh fan, I felt it was the closure that we all needed. Because I hate to disparage anything from the show or from the manga, but the ending, especially for the show, is very underwhelming, considering how long you've been following those characters. It's definitely an ending, but there's so many questions and there's so many loose ends. It feels like, in comparison to how much setup they'd had leading up to it. But the movie does a great job of letting you say goodbye to these characters, because they really only focused on the pharaoh, on Yami Yugi in the show, and saying goodbye to him, because ultimately, he's the hero, I guess. But the movie does a great job of reminding you that sometimes it's not just the guy, with the loudest voice and the biggest hair and the best cards who is the hero. That they're all heroes in their own way, and they all have moments where you get to say goodbye to them and you get to see them in their element. And I thought there are definitely flaws. The villain is kind of hokey. I don't want to spoil it for you. I do recommend seeing it. But,
okay. Oh, I will. Yeah.
But I think that the dub, from I only saw the dub because I haven't been able to watch the Japanese. But the dub was as good as they've ever been, in my opinion. And I'm not going to say the dub when it first came out was the best dub I'd ever heard, but it was the thing that I fell in love with. It was the thing that it ingratiated me to the show. Without that original 4Kids dub, I wouldn't even know the show existed. And they did a good job telling that story. And I thought with this movie especially, they really tried their best to one up themselves, and I thought they succeeded.
Right. I think people give obviously people give 4Kids, and I forget what they're called now, but 4Kids at the time, a lot of shit for, obviously localization issues and stuff like that. But I actually really like their actors a lot. And I think they do a good job with sometimes the hokey scripts that they're given. Like, and, it's interesting to see kind of like I think, like, for example, Dan Green, I think, is a very good actor. And I think he manages to turn some of the most ridiculous lines into believable moments where you actually feel for the character, whereas any other less talented actor, I think, would just kind of fuck it up.
Oh, definitely.
So I think people don't give them enough credit, and I'm curious, I guess, to see what the difference is, because is Kaiba that much of a dickhole in the Japanese version? I don't know, because it seems like he's so over the top douchey in the dub. I don't know if that was a localization decision or if that's just what he's like. Because I've only really read the original manga.
I believe that. I mean, from my experience, I'm pretty sure that in the Japanese, it's not nearly as overt. I think he's just a lot more. He's a very big personality, and I think that especially with traditional cartoons, the way they're presented over here, you have to have that sort of that antagonist who acts like a jerk, sort of like Gary in Pokemon. Even though ultimately he obviously became a much more well-rounded character. Kaiba, I think they definitely pushed that button more so than they did in the Japanese. In the Japanese, he's just very obsessed with being the best. In the English, he's obsessed with making sure everyone knows that they're the worst.
Oh man, I love Kaiba so much. One thing I wanted to ask you was, are you familiar, because this was like a big part of my childhood, are you familiar with like the Japanese openings of Yu-Gi-Oh? Because I know you used at least one of them as an opening for Abridged. But have you watched like all the Japanese Yu-Gi-Oh openings?
I've watched them, yeah. I wouldn't be able to perform them or anything like that, but I do. I love the old soundtrack, like the Japanese soundtrack. I think that's actually one of the things about the new movie that I think was a shame, is that they replaced all of the new music that they produced for it, which was all orchestral versions of the old Japanese themes.
Oh, okay.
And I thought that was something that was sorely missed. But at the same time, I don't think that the audience over here would have the same appreciation for it. I don't know, but yeah, I definitely have a fondness for the old tunes.
Do you have a favorite? Do you know them well enough to have a favorite Japanese opening offhand?
I loved the Eyes, is that what it's called?
Oh, Eyes is so good. I think that's an ending. But yeah.
Oh, that's right.
So good. Yeah. Because the reason why I bring this up is when I was a kid, this was like when I was first kind of exploring the internet. I was big into Yu-Gi-Oh at the time. And so I went on a fan site. I forget the name of it. And they had the openings in shitty tiny videos or whatever. But at the time, as a kid,
real player.
Right, real player. I think it was probably a real player file. And I at the time I was amazed, because it was, first of all, a Japanese opening for the show, and that was when I was, I think, either just really getting into it, or this was one of those steps into getting balls deep into anime. And so they had the little shitty real player videos, and they had ones that were beyond where the dub was. And so obviously as a kid, I was like, holy shit, what does this mean, or whatever. And so I watched those over and over again. I'm an anime opening nut to this day. I love watching them. And I really like what's it called? Shuffle, if you know that one. It's the third I think the first Battle City opening, if I'm not mistaken, or something like that. But anyway, I fucking love that song. Anyway, I just no one else could appreciate what I'm talking about, so I just wanted to share that information with you, because
that's the one where it has Marek and Yami, it pans around them and then it zooms in on them split screen. No,
that might be the second one. I forget. It's been a while since I've actually seen the video. I still have a couple of the songs on my iPod, because no regrets. I live how I like to live.
Absolutely.
Yeah, still got some Naruto openings on there too. A good song is a good song. But
definitely.
Yeah, I do want to, because I'm not gonna have this be just the Yu-Gi-Oh! R, because I notice on Twitter a lot that you, at least I get the impression that you like to consume lots of different kind of media. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely have done less so in my more recent years just because of time, but I used to be just I I would consume any form of media that passed my way.
Right. Because I find that I can talk for the like easiest or the longest with people who I feel like like a kinship with in terms of like pursue or wanting to consume a lot of different types of media. Like I know that you like watch, not just cartoons but also a lot of, different live action dramas and other things. And for me, I'm also kind of the same way. Like I think it's more interesting when people have kind of a varied array of interests, that I guess it gives more things to talk about. So is there anything that you are currently like media wise, like playing or watching anything good right now?
I'm right in the middle of a playthrough of Night in the Woods, which is an indie game that
Oh,
just
okay.
came out. We got it on PS4, and that is brilliant. It reminds me of like the old Tim Schafer, like Day of the Tentacle sort of Grim Fandango kind of point and click games. The way, certainly the way the dialogue's written, it's very. I don't want to say Gen X, but it's just very charming in a very sort of dark way, and it's a very adult game. It's a very the story is like sort of a coming of age thing, but everybody's sort of cute furry animals, but they all act like a regular society of people, and you're this character who, without going too much into spoilers, she's come home having dropped out of college, and she's returned to her hometown, and she's realizing that maybe trying to find the thing that you used to love isn't, going back to the past isn't gonna help you progress as a person any. But it's a really good game. It's definitely a great narrative. I recommend it for anybody who's a fan of clever dialogue.
Yeah, I've been seeing that around. I did not actually. Was that a Kickstarter game or something, or was that just made?
There might have been
Because it feels like one of the.
there might have been a fundraiser. I'm not aware of that. I know that they had a demo at E3 certainly last year, so they've been going for a while. But yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if they had a fundraiser.
Yeah, because a friend of mine just told me about that game like offhand, and I had never heard of it before. But he was like, "Oh yeah, they've been developing this for a while." I think that's the game he was talking about, because now it's out, and he's been tweeting about it and stuff. And the art style for that does look it's kind of reminds me of like kind of like Parappa the Rapper, kind of that kind of very cartoony look to the animals, which I like, and I like how it looks a lot, and so it looks very funny. So that's on PS4, you said?
It's on PS4, but I think it's on other platforms as well. I couldn't tell you which ones offhand. I got it because my wife recommended it after she played the demo at E3, and she talked about it for a long time. And then I was like, okay, I'm happy to play it through with you. So I've been at the controller guiding us, and she's been able to make some of the dialogue choices which affect the story. But yeah, if you like Parappa the Rapper and stuff like that, the visual style is very reminiscent of that. There's even a rhythm game part where, because you're in a band, it's sort of Scott Pilgrim-esque, I guess. But you're in a band, and you get to play the songs. And I remember saying right before the rhythm game aspect of it opened up, I was like, I hope this game just turns into Jamalami for this part. And I was blown away.
How long is that game roughly?
I want to say 7-8 hours at most.
Okay. I find these days that because some people hate short games, but I find that's like perfect for me these days because I have limited time. And so if a game is like condensed and tells a story well in a short amount of time, I'm like, sign me up. Like that's exactly what I want. I don't need.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, I don't have the patience these days for like, well, okay, that's not true. It's like certain games, like I say this and I'm like 60 hours in like Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon, but it's more like a few games I'll accept because it's basically like the equivalent of like comfort food where I'm just shoveling hours of gameplay into my mouth. But other games where it's like a narrative and I guess it's not fair to label all JRPGs like this, but like JRPGs tend to do this where it's a very lengthy, long, bloated, fillery storyline. I find I loved them as a kid or teen at least, and now it's like I don't have the time for this anymore.
I loved those games back when you could play them all day, and that was your day basically. But these days, when you have to work and then like you load your save game, and you're like, what the hell was I even doing in this scenario? Why am I here? Where am I supposed to be going? Who are these people? Why? I appreciate games like Yakuza 0, which I'm playing right now, and I know that you've shown interest in that.
I need to play those.
Oh, hell yeah, man.
Those look so good.
But I appreciate games like that because they give you recaps. Like at the end of every chapter, they're like, here's what just happened in this chapter. Like Alan Wake, I don't know if you played that. They did like a previously on Alan Wake.
Yeah, I played that. Yeah.
I appreciated that. Not necessarily, I don't think it added anything, but it just helped my poor adult brain figure out where I was and what was going on.
Yeah, I feel that's useful because I feel bad because some games, like I was playing Sleeping Dogs recently, or not recently at this point, like a while ago, and that's a pretty. Have you played that at all?
Yeah. I loved the true crime games. I think that was originally a true crime game, and they just adapted it into Sleeping Dogs when they lost the license.
See that I was enjoying that game, but then I think Pokemon Sun came out, and I was like, bye. And then I feel bad because like now I don't remember like where I am in the game or like how to play anymore. So I should go back to it. But at this point for me, like, if I drop a game, I kind of have to just drop it. Like, I'm not, because like I used to be like, I'll go back and finish, whatever the fuck this game someday. And these days I'm like, okay, I'm not going to. And I'm fine with like, playing a game for like a couple of hours and just going, yeah, that was fine, and then not finishing it because that's all I need out of that game. Like I was enjoying what was that game? Like the Tomb Raider. There was the new Tomb Raider or whatever, and that game was pretty alright. I played a couple hours, nothing wrong with it, and I just kind of was like, okay, I'm good.
Yeah, I had the same experience with that game. I was like, I got, I think, 5 hours in, and then I was like, I kind of see where this is going. I don't really need to follow this through anymore. I get it. My problem is like the real game happens after I stop playing the game, because it's like I leave the game on my shelf, and then it's a contest as to how long it'll be before I feel not guilty enough that I'll trade it in. Like I have to, like a certain amount of time has to pass before I'll be like, yeah, I'm just going to trade this in.
Usually I can be pretty like brutal in terms of like, all right, you're gone. I mean, you're in the trade-in pile. There's one game right now. Did you play Last Guardian?
I have it. I haven't actually touched it yet.
Okay. Because I got, and I think everyone has had wildly different experiences with it. I had a very frustrating experience playing it, and I kind of stopped playing it, and it's been, I think, weeks at this point. So I'm like at this point now where I have to really consider, like, am I going to keep this game? Because people say it's really good, and apparently the ending's really good, and it has like really good payoff. But from what I hear, it's also a short game, and I've played like a good chunk of it, I think. So I'm like, but it's such a critical. I think it was slightly mixed, but I think overall the reaction to it was positive. So I'm at this point right now where I'm not sure if I'm going to go back, but I feel like it's like that guilt where I feel like I should. Going back to Yakuza, those games look so fucking good, and your tweets about them just, and not even just yours, but any tweet I see, I'm like, this looks like a magical, like, beautiful masterpiece of a game series.
I really feel like those games I think they should be infinitely more popular than they are. I think there's just I don't know if it's a cultural thing, but people just seem reluctant to pick up and start playing them. And I understand that for some of the later games in the series, I do, just because there is a lot of lore, there is a lot of character development that you miss if you jump in like at Yakuza 3 or 4. But at the same time, I truly believe that the gameplay more than makes up for a lot of the confusion that you might have, and it does do its best to recap everything. And ultimately, in my opinion, you can kind of assume a lot of things about these characters. You can kind of imply like what the relationships are and who's the higher up in the Yakuza clan and everything. But they're so good. I really believe those games are like, they should be as popular as like Final Fantasy is over here, because they really do. The thing that I love about them is that since game one, they got a winning strategy down. They nailed it the first time, and they've recognized that. They've never really done anything to change the formula. The most they've done is they've introduced a new engine in the new one. So the way your character moves and fights is slightly different, but the world is exactly the same. The characters are the same. We don't stray too far from the central location of the series. They just keep building and building story-wise on top of it, and that's what I need. That's what I appreciate out of a game. They're not just like, let's just make it open world now, or let's add like driving and stuff. I guess they did add driving in Yakuza 5, but they don't change it up to the point that it's unrecognizable as a game in that series, you know?
Right. I do think that what you said about jumping in is kind of like an obstacle, because for me, I'm the type of person who does like to start from the first game, almost to a fault. And the first one's on PS2, right? Although aren't they doing a remake of that for
they are,
PS4?
yeah, they are releasing the remake, I think, sometime either later this year or early next year in the West. I think it came out in Japan already. But that first game, I mean, even Zero, I think you can start with that one just because it chronologically it does take place at the beginning of everything. But one, definitely pick up that remake, because that first one, in my opinion, has probably the best story, and it's just so charming, and for all the gritty, extreme violence and everything, there's a really nice story going on in that game. And I don't want to spoil anything, but I would recommend it to anybody, like especially if you love just the Japanese culture and some of the more over the top aspects of their media. I think someone listening to this will definitely get a kick out of it.
Yeah. Is Yakuza Zero, like, how can I explain this? So you know how some prequels, when you watch them or play them, they're very like, get it? Wink? Like, it's like, you kind of need to have seen the original stuff to, like, appreciate the prequel. Is it pretty standalone in terms of that? Like, can I, if I jump into Yakuza 0 first, would I miss out, like, on a considerable amount of story, or is it pretty straightforward standalone?
I think it's pretty self-contained. The only times I've noticed winks to the original games have been like side quests, like nothing in the main story, nothing in any of the cutscenes, nothing in any of the main characters in this game. There's like one side quest where you meet a fortune teller, and the gist of the side quest is you basically ask her what's going to happen in the next few games. And if you played the games, you understand what she's talking about. And if you haven't, she's just saying a bunch of mystical mumbo jumbo. So I think it's pretty well presented. It's not like Star Wars Rogue One, where those two guys from the Mos Eisley Cantina are on a different planet and they walk by and they say their lines from the original movie and then they leave.
Yeah. So the second one's, let me see if I can get this right. The second one's on PS2 as well. Is that, and then 3 and 4 on PS3, and then 5 is on PS4. Is that right?
Yes, 5 is on PS4, and 6 will also be on PS4.
Okay. And I think one other thing that not kept me away, but the first PS2 game was only dubbed, right?
Certainly in the West, yeah, but I imagine the remake will be Japanese.
Right. Nothing wrong with dubs, but because it was a dub in the first one, and then the second one, I believe, was not a dub.
That's right.
I like to have, consistency, whether it's English or Japanese. So maybe I'll just get. Can they just remake 2 so I can have?
Apparently they did in Japan. They remade it for the PS3, but that never came out. That's never been made available in the West. So unfortunately, we're SOL on that one. And unfortunately, I love that sequel. That sequel took the first game and really just pushed the envelope. There's my favorite scene in the second game is where the main character punches a tiger. And it's one of the more ridiculous things that happens in the series. And I think it set the tone and it set the bar for the whole thing. And I just appreciate how outlandish it got.
Yeah. Oh man, because I think a couple years ago I was like, should I just jump into Yakuza 3 because that's current gen, and then I don't have to like go back. But then I don't know. I will play those games one day. Oh, Effie. Effie is clawing the chair behind me. Anyway, as they keep making more of these games, and as I just see more of the ridiculous shit in them, there's no way I'm not going to play these games. And I'll probably just jump into like either 0 or the first remake. I think that might be a good place to start.
Definitely.
Because they look so good. Now, not one other thing, depends on how long we talk about it, but another thing at least that I did want to talk about with you is fucking Steven Universe. How good
my God.
That shit is. I don't know about you, but I think it is genuinely one of the finest cartoons America side that has been made ever. And I realize that sounds like hyperbole, but I really do believe that. I don't know if you necessarily match my enthusiasm for that, but I know you are a fan of it as well, and so I want to let's talk some Stevie U. I think that's something I need to get done on this podcast at some point because that show is so damn good.
I definitely agree with you. I don't know of another cartoon that has made me feel as vast a range of emotions and consistently had as good a story. And like every character on that show has something going on. Like it's not just like there are main characters and side characters. Everybody in that show feels like a main character. Like everybody plays an important role. There's been a lot of comparisons to that show to like Dragon Ball Z, and I think it's a decent comparison, but at the same time, there's nothing like this show. Just there's not been anything with so many strong, not just female characters, but characters in general in a long time that's come out of Western animation. I'm consistently impressed every time. Like we just watched the most recent arc where Greg gets kidnapped.
So good.
It was probably the high point of the show so far. Like at least one of them. The zoo episode was so. Like there are just some concepts that blow my mind as an adult that I can't comprehend how children would see it, but at the same time they're presented so simply, like without any. They're not trying to hide anything from the kids. They're not trying to they're not doing the whole Shadow Realm thing on it, but they present it in such an abstract way that it's not just straightforward like, oh, killing is bad, or your parents love you. It's be aware of the fact that your parents may not be the ideal person that you imagine they are when you're a child. Eventually you'll learn that they are just as flawed as you, and that this thing that they've been doing, raising you or even not raising you and not being part of your life, is because they're a human being and because they're just as flawed as you are. Like it presents these ideas, and through Steven's eyes that's the perfect thing about the show to me, is that it's a huge story, a huge, very, very dark at times story being viewed through these very innocent eyes of Steven, and that's what really makes the show work as well as it does, I think.
Yeah. I think what you're saying is about the accessibility for kids, I think is really important, because I think a lot of... Hold on, sorry, Effie.
Sure.
Effie, 1 second. One thing that I think a lot of Western cartoons tend not suffer from, but there is this idea of like adult cartoons and children cartoons. And I think Steven Universe and the best cartoons are ones that are accessible for both, and Steven Universe manages to tell its storylines, which I think are very mature, like you said, very mature, very thoughtful, but it doesn't have to be... I don't want to say gritty, but it doesn't have to force itself to be more like too quote unquote adult, if you know what I'm saying. I compare it to like how I love the DC animated universe more than any comic iteration, which I've read only a couple of the like Batman comics or whatever. But I think the DCAU can tell very mature stories and not be gratuitous or I mean, nothing wrong with gratuitous, but it feels less. What's the word? Forced, I guess. Like it can. Like I'm impressed that they can tell stories like in Steven Universe and Justice League that are mature, but kids can watch them and appreciate them as well, which I think is important and also very hard to do. And I also think and we talked about this briefly on Twitter, but like serialized storytelling in cartoons is something that I really, really want more of, and there's not that much of it because a lot of shows are either episodic jokey or just jokey, but I think it's something that we can benefit from. And I'm rambling too much, but are there any we talked about it briefly, but any serialized animation, Western animation that you particularly enjoy?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm trying to think of serialized Western animation in general. I know there's obviously Adventure Time. I struggled a bit to get into Adventure Time just because it's a little too off the walls for me. It's just I enjoy it when it's on. I just have never really been focused on it just because I've never really gravitated towards, I guess, any of the characters as much as I have with like something like Steven.
Yeah. What's frustrating about Adventure Time is I like Adventure Time and I still have actually kept up with it. But it's taken them so long to finally start telling some actual serialized storytelling with lore and stakes. Steven Universe pretty much from the not immediately, but it very quickly starts to establish rules and like stakes and character building and stuff like that. Adventure Time, like now, it's like its final or maybe second to last or final season. They did I don't know how familiar are you with Adventure Time, like season wise? Like, have you watched much at all, or?
I watched a lot of the early stuff. I haven't really been watching a lot of the more recent stuff, unfortunately.
Okay. One interesting thing is what you mentioned about Steven Universe, like you don't know how kids would react to the show. I feel that way about Adventure Time to an almost negative extent,
right?
Where it's like, how would kids ever like this at all? Especially at the point, some of the episodes now, which are very, they almost feel like, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but they almost feel like just very dry adult drama pieces. Like Jake goes to see his daughters play, and there's tension between them, and it's just very, and I kind of like that because it is kind of not what but what most cartoons on that channel are doing, but it sort of alienates, I think, I would say, well, I don't know, because I don't really know if kids still are into Adventure Time or not. The first couple seasons are very bouncy and very goofy. And then with the help of Rebecca Sugar, they started doing some, I don't know did you watch any of those like Ice King episodes where they got more dramatic?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And that stuff was pretty good. And they semi-recently did a Marceline serialized miniseries, which I thought was like some of the best work they've done. And it's kind of a shame that it took them this long to realize that having continuous story arcs is good and not something you should shy away from. They did another one recently that was pretty good. So yeah, it's like I watch Adventure Time and I'm like, I wish you could be more like Steven Universe, but it's not fair not fair to make them, conform to what I want. But I think they could, and I think they've started to benefit from the idea of serialized storytelling. And I know I did recommend to you Avatar, which I do think you should give another shot if you have some downtime and feel like it, because the second and third seasons of that are very rewarding. The first season is bad.
Yeah, I definitely the stuff that I've caught of Avatar has impressed me. Like certainly later down the line, and the stuff in Korra that I've seen from watching it with friends when I've been at conventions. They've been like, "We got to have a Korra night," and I'm like, "Okay," and I hung out with them and watched that, and it was just like the voice acting and the animation and just the drama involved was very impressive. I thought of a cartoon, and it's going to be a strange one, I think, that I did enjoy that was serialized, of all things. Season 1 of Frisky Dingo. Did you ever watch Frisky Dingo?
What is Risky Dingo?
Oh, Frisky Dingo was an Adult Swim show.
Frisky Dingo.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was an Adult Swim show that lasted 2 seasons, and it's by the guys who did Archer, who do Archer, I suppose.
Okay.
And I guess I guess you could call that a serialized cartoon, but it's more adult in nature. And Frisky Dingo was adult in nature, but Adult Swim, as far as I know, aside from Venture Brothers, which I would also list as a great serialized Western cartoon, Adult Swim had never really done something where, certainly not with their 10-minute format shows, where the characters actually grew and learned something, and the story would keep progressing as the show continued. And season 1 of Frisky Dingo, it's sort of a breakdown of superhero tropes. The sort of medium of superheroes, where there's a supervillain called Killface who was trying to market himself as the new big supervillain on the scene, but his marketing team sucks, and the best that they can give him is a postcard campaign that says "Welcome to your doom," and "your" is spelled YOU''RE. So it bothers him. Then the whole thing sort of feels very similar to what Venture Brothers has done at times with the superhero genre, or certainly the Hanna-Barbera cartoons of yore. But Frisky Dingo was remarkable to me because, like I said, Adult Swim had never really tampered or tested the waters to see like if they could have these characters actually grow. And these characters were idiots, and these characters were sometimes detestable people, and it was a baffling moment to me where one of the episodes, I think it was episode 6 of season 1, ended with a gun being put to one of the other characters' head, and they were counting down to shoot him, and the episode ended right before they reached 1, and I realized, to my complete surprise, that I cared if he lived or died, which I'd never felt with an Adult Swim character. You know, they seem to die every episode, but that show in particular, I if you like Adult Swim at all, and I know it's not for everybody, then I think that's some of its best work is season 1 of Frisky Dingo.
Okay. Okay. And how many seasons is that?
There's 2, and the second one, their heart wasn't in it nearly as much, and you can tell. But that first season, I thought was bloody great writing.
Okay. I should check that out.
It's on Hulu if you have a Hulu account.
Okay. I'm thirsty for some good serialized animation. Going back to Steven Universe, I think you mentioned that Dragon Ball Z, people compare it to that, and I think Steven Universe owes, I think, a lot to actually anime. You can obviously tell a lot of it is super inspired by anime, which I think to its benefit. Like it's basically a really good slice of life anime combined with a really good action anime.
Yeah.
That's what I love about it. And I always tell that to my wife, like, man, this was anime as fuck. Like they did what was it? There was an arc. What was the big arc before the Greg rescue arc? Was that Yellow Diamond? I forget. But there's a moment where they start playing the theme song. I think it's the end of one of the seasons, like in the middle of the scene as the episode's about to end, and I was like, man, this show so fucking anime. I love it. Oh my God.
It definitely has those qualities, and I think you're right. Some of its strengths do come from its inspirations. Like you can see a lot of like video game culture in there as well, which it's remarkable how that's permeated media in general. Like stuff like Scott Pilgrim or just TV shows, comics, movies. You can see the influence of like 80s and 90s like video game culture sort of slowly leaking in there, and I think that's our new storybooks that we grew up on. You know, those are the things that we shared, that experience as children that we're all slowly celebrating. Like look at something like Wreck-It Ralph. Like that was the Toy Story of like the 2010s, I suppose, because it was just that those were the toys we played with, and those were the characters that we loved from those games, and I think media is slowly like gravitating towards accepting it and celebrating it, and I think it's all the better for it.
Oh yeah, and I think people, the people who are making them are giant nerds. Like that's why like a lot of the Steven Universe, when they either reference an anime or a game, it's so accurate because the story the writers are giant nerds. They are giant weebs, and I think that is a good thing. Because before this, you know, if a video game was like referenced in a cartoon, it would be like the most generic, you know, like ding ding. You hear sonic rings, and you hear just like it's just like a little, you know what I mean? You always hear sonic rings for some reason in like fake video games or whatever. But now it's like no, people get it. Like they are, and some of them are like our age now, so they're in the industry. They are permeating the cartoons that they make with their nerdy touch, and I think they managed to do it in a way that's not too like get it, because I think they very accurately portray or do it in a way that feels natural and still feels very funny. And I mean, they do like, oh man, what was the one, the pizza delivery one where there was just some straight up End of Evangelion pizza stuff?
Yeah, that was amazing.
Beautiful.
I love that because it's just treated as another part of the show. It's not treated like an Easter egg. It's treated just like almost like a part of the set dressing is the video game references. I do enjoy that.
Yeah. I know you mentioned you're not as like big into anime as you know, as maybe everybody else you know. But are there any anime you've seen recently, semi-recently, or just some of your favorites, I guess? If you have any offhand.
I watched more anime in the last, I want to say 6 months than I have in the last 10 years, just because I got one of those sweet Crunchyroll subscriptions, which I highly recommend to anybody who has even got a passing interest in anime, because that's your go-to place for it. But I really loved Erased. I watched that.
That was very good.
Yeah, I honestly, at least for the first 8 episodes, was enraptured with that show. I was enthralled just because it felt like I understood that it was an adaptation of the manga, and it was somewhat structured differently because they rushed through a lot of the content in the latter half of the manga very quickly in those last 3 episodes, but for the anime adaptation, they took the strong, like the show's strong points, which was the stuff with the kids and the stuff with Inazuki trying to protect her and everything. That stuff, they just took all the strongest story beats and they focused on those, and they nailed it perfectly. I'm not going to say it's a perfect show, but I was so on board with that in ways I've not been on board with a lot of anime in a long time. Just because I don't know, I struggle to get on board with a lot of anime shows just because they're so over the top and outlandish. But that was a very grounded show.
Oh, absolutely. I also find these days I have pretty much no patience for fan service.
Yeah.
It just, as a kid, you're like, haha, whatever. But now it's like, this is unnecessary. And also, a lot of anime has, you know, their idea of what quote unquote humor is, which involves a lot of screaming in your face or that sort of thing. So I think I have a lot of less patience for kind of what some people might love about the over-the-top, like you said, kind of aspects of anime, which is why I'm more drawn to either slice-of-life stuff these days or like very mature storytelling. And Erased is very, very mature storytelling. I do think the end structurally the end kind of fizzles a little bit for me, but
lets it down a little bit, yeah.
But I think that, like you said, it is attributable to it doesn't follow the manga straight to the end, I think, because there's like weird. I'm not going to spoil anything. Anyway, so, but like you said, the stuff. Oh man, the stuff with the kids. Even like and it wasn't just like dark, depressing throughout. There's really nice, warm moments in that show. Nice tension. Some really just straight up. They get really real, like with addressing domestic abuse and all that kind of stuff. So it's something that I wish was in more anime, is the being able to tell sort of a mature adult story without having to resort to over the top anime nonsense, which can, I think, distract from the story. So that was really good. Anything else or anything you didn't like? I can I can go for some hot takes on some anime. Anything else notable?
I watched this show called Number 6, which I guess is relatively popular from what I've gathered. I know I've seen people talk about it online, and I've seen people talk about it at conventions, and they've been very positive. And I think it's the biggest piece of shit I've seen in like years. Like, not even just anime. I think it's awful. I think it's an atrocity. I think it's just like, because people, I don't want to talk too much about the plot because it gets me so angry, but people celebrate the fact that it's a very positive representation of a gay relationship, and I'm all for that. I'm all for giving these people representation, giving those kinds of relationships like a focus in a mainstream show. But it's such a toxic relationship the way it's presented. One of the first things one of the characters does to the other one is hold a fork or a knife to their throat and say, I could kill you right now. And I'm like, this is not how a romance begins. One character is super naive about the world, and the other character is super jaded by the world, and there's no real bond between the two of them. They just fall in love because the show decides that they're going to fall in love. And it's so forced, and it's within the setting of a dystopian society. And the dystopian society stuff, at least in the anime, is barely touched on. You barely have an idea of why the society is acting the way it is, what it's even doing. But what we do know from this show is that apparently there is a forest spirit at work that can control bees, that has bees lay eggs in people's necks, and then when these eggs hatch, the people turn old and die in the space of 5 seconds. And if that isn't one of the dumbest plot points that anime has conceived in such a long time, it's just baffling to me that people celebrate this show. That's the thing that worries me, is that people think that this is a good example of a story with these themes. It's really, really not. It's garbage, and it bothers me that people put it on such a pedestal the way they do, because they're, and I understand it, they're desperate to see positive examples of homosexual relationships, and so am I, but I believe that this is the opposite of that.
Well, oh man, but HBs, that sounds so
good. HBs.
Yeah. Oh man.
I really want the alternate version where Jerry Seinfeld voices all the bees that murder people.
Oh, I would watch that. I had heard about that show. Is that maybe I'm thinking of a different show. I think I heard about it a little while back, but yeah, I had heard that it was or at least in supposedly a very gay positive show, but yeah, HBs, I think I'm good. I think I'll pass on that one.
I loved My Hero Academia. I loved that show.
That was really fun.
Yeah, I didn't. It wasn't like the best thing I'd ever seen, but I had a great time watching that.
That was a lot of fun. Have you seen? Now I'm just recommending things to you. Have you seen Mob Psycho 100?
No, but everybody recommends it to me, and my good friend Kerber voices one of the characters in the dub.
Right,
I do want to check it out.
It's really fucking good. Now, did you watch One Punch Man?
I didn't, but that's one of the shows that is on my list.
Okay, One Punch Man is also good. Mob Psycho 100 is better. And animation wise, it is. I'm not trying to say One Punch Man is not good. One Punch Man is also very good. But Mob Psycho 100 is beautifully animated, and has it's really fucking funny, and has sort of like the character development that One Punch Man, because One Punch Man is more of a gag anime, kind of jokey, but Mob Psycho is more kind of focused on at least the main character's growth and and the relationship between him and his mentor. And so definitely check that out at some point.
How long is that show?
It's on your list. I'm sure that's, I think, 12 or 13. It's not too long. Yeah. And I'm sure you have a gigantic list of different things to watch or whatever, because I have a disgusting, I have word files of just games to play, and because I'm very list oriented, and anime and shows, and I have to hope that I can try to get through as many of them as I can before I die, because otherwise I'll be a ghost and haunt the earth.
I'm very much like you when it comes to like video. Certainly when it comes to shows. I know you mentioned with video games, specifically Yakuza, you want to play it from the beginning. I'm like that with anime. I'm like, I need to start from the beginning. But everybody always tells me with shows like Bleach and One Piece, and I know there's like hundreds of episodes, and they're always like, just tune in to one time. And I'm like, no, I need to catch up. I need to watch all 200, 300 episodes to be on board with this, and that's my biggest hindrance, is that for the longer a show goes, I'm less likely to start watching it. So I appreciate you telling me, certainly with Mob Psycho, and is it going to have a season 2?
I don't think anything's confirmed, but I'm sure there will be at some point, because it doesn't conclude it basically hints that there's more, because there is more manga.
Well, I'm glad that I'm getting on board early on.
Right. I'm exactly like you in that if anyone's like, oh, just skip this arc, I'm like, no, what are you talking about? I need to watch it, and if I can't watch it through, then I'm not going to finish the show.
Yeah.
With the exception of obviously blatant filler arcs, but yeah, well, I did watch One Piece all the way through, and One Piece is the shit. But yeah, I am also these days similar to what I mentioned about short games, short anime. If an anime is like 12 episodes, I'm like, yes, that's the good shit right there. That's why Erased was so good. That's why Mob Psycho was so satisfying, because I can just watch it sometimes in one sitting, just bam, get a good solid story out of the way. But yeah, all right. I think we can wrap this up. It's been about an hour. So
sure, plug your shit, man.
If you're interested in checking out any of my content, such as Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, the parody series I do of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime, you can go to team4star.com, where they have a Little Kuriboh tab that you can click on and go check out all those videos. On YouTube, you can find me at CardGamesFTW. That's the username. I believe it's youtube.com/user/CardGamesFTW. I might be wrong about that. But aside from that, if you're interested in getting in touch for representation for a convention or something, you can go to justgoright.com and find my page on there, and any kind of official correspondence can go through that website.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for sitting down. This was fun, and I'm glad I got to actually. I know I tend to ramble. But
it's fine, man. I know that I've struggled to find the point in my sentence when I start one. I tend to start speaking and then not know where the breaks are. So I hope that I've contributed somewhat to the podcast, and I do want to say thank you for having me on board and everything. And I hope I didn't piss anybody off too much by saying number 6 was a piece of shit.
Listen, HB's just. I mean, there's no one defending that. So.
There is not.
And I think this was a good, solid discussion. So, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you guys, the listeners, next time. Goodbye.
Thanks for listening.